The story begins with the fact that not long ago, a game called The Last Days became very popular on the internet. Everyone plunged into the virtual world with great interest, but its author was still unknown. It's as if some unknown higher power created this masterpiece and extremely exciting video game. However, the main character could not afford to play it in this life. Moreover, experts recommended not to get too involved in video games, as it had a bad effect on the psyche, and they even advised to delete it so as not to fall into the trap of internet scammers. The young man lay down on his bed and tried to get a good night's sleep, but he failed to do so. Suddenly, the guy heard a thin female voice, which declared that she managed to find him. The girl literally sat astride the teenager and quite convincingly asked him to accept her. Half asleep, Hao thought that he was in a dream, where he dreamed of a sweet lady. Suddenly, he saw in front of him a huge pink flower with large teeth and an incomprehensible plant next to it. At a certain moment, the flower began to bite the unknown grass with particular cruelty. In his sleep, the guy felt incredible pain in his body and instantly woke up. As a result, the teenager stretched his hands forward and felt something soft. Khan could not understand what it was, so he began to take a closer look. A moment later, Hao once again discovered the unknown girl. The stunned protagonist, in turn, screamed loudly. It seemed that the whole house heard him. He immediately jumped out of bed and pushed the stranger away from him, asking who she was. The young girl urged him not to be so scared and said that she didn't mean anything bad. She also said her name was Ren Kunchi and said that she was from the Piao Miao Kai group. The shocked young guy asked her again. Ren repeated and hastened to calm him down, after which her gaze sharply fell on the window. The frightened young man also looked into it. He was literally shocked by what was outside his window, and the teenager immediately backed away. A couple of seconds later, a huge monster flew into the window. It looked like a wolf. However, Kun immediately escorted the intruder through the wall. Stunned, Hao looked back and discovered a large hole in the wall. It seemed to him that this was unreal and that he was still in a dream, but that was not the case. At this time, Chi's hands sparkled with magic, and she said that no one would harm her master. Then they looked outside together because strange sounds were coming from the street. Seeing several of the same demons, the girl said that there were too many of them, after which Ren absolutely calmly and naturally jumped down. She stated that she would deal with them now and asked him to wait a little. Han, not understanding anything, watched as Kun boldly scattered the monsters to the sides. It looked like a computer game or really like a nightmare. However, by that time the young man began to understand that this was an inexplicable reality. At that moment, the TV suddenly spoke to him, declaring that his game had broken through the dimension. And then all the most interesting things will happen, after which he asked if the young man was ready to go on an exciting journey. At first, Hao thought that it was all his imagination and silently looked at the TV. Soon he grabbed a chair and angrily asked who he was. The unknown person replied that he was the creator of the game. The Last Days. And the teenager will soon control everything in her, Khan asked him again. Vientiane hastened to give her name and say that she is a powerful system. The enraged young man asked if it was because of him that something incomprehensible was happening outside. The program replied that playing on the phone was too boring, and it did not show all its genius, adding that after several thousand updates, the game has broken through the wall between dimensions and Chi, with werewolves are the characters in the game. Then the perplexed teenager asked why he needed him. Vientiane stated that she needed a ruler, and since she found his photo on the internet, all the characters in the video game now want to help him. Therefore, Kun used an interesting method to obtain his energy, because she cannot return to the game. Thus, many girls will soon come to their savior to get his energy. Suddenly, the guy started doing exercises, and the perplexed Vientiane asked what he was doing. Hao replied that he needed to prepare for the upcoming battles, but the system urged him not to take it so seriously. After all, in any case, the end result will either be his head cut off or even worse. Then Khan began to pack his things in order to simply escape, saying that he would not allow himself to be killed. However, the program assured him that it was too late and asked him to look outside. The guy thought for a moment, and then slowly approached the hole that had formed in the wall, where I saw something unimaginable and was simply dumbfounded by what was happening. The night sky was covered with unknown wormholes. The system declared that the first invasion had already begun. Some rays suddenly shot out from the violet circular phenomena onto the earth. The townspeople could not take their eyes off the magical wormholes and tried to understand what was happening. The main character, in turn, asked Vientiane what these light rays were. The program happily declared that its game had broken through the dimension and along with its attributes and characters. and the young man will no longer have to play mobile games because his life is like one big video game. Hao thought that the system had simply gone crazy, and there was really no point in him running anywhere. Suddenly, he heard Kun scream and looked down where she was surrounded by werewolves. One of them was a king and had the 3rd level, and he also had the attribute of Earth. Khan instantly called on Vientiane to arm him, since Ren would not be able to cope against such a strong monster. But the program said that initially he must earn points in order to receive a card with a weapon or any ability. Adding that he already had 30 points, the teenager felt some kind of catch. But since he didn't have much of a choice, naturally the guy decided to use his glasses. There were 3 cards in front of him. The red one concealed a skill, the blue one could equip him, and the gold one provided various potions. Of course, the young man chose the red card in the hope of becoming the owner of a killer skill. Thus, he gained the ability of a Fire Fist, which increased the power of the attack. At that moment, a bracelet suddenly grabbed his wrist. The program called on him to attach a card to activate the skill. The teenager immediately leaned the Flame Strike card against the skill bracelet. The accessory immediately glowed with fire magic, and the display showed the ability of the fist. The guy instantly felt a surge of strength and rushed to help the girl, which, meanwhile, could not cope with such a strong opponent in the form of the King of Wolves. The powerful werewolf continued to unleash his crushing chi blows. The young warrior was in an extremely poor state and did not know how to resist the monster. Realizing that she could not cope, she began to mentally talk to her father, stating that she was unable to fulfill his instructions and repay everything in the next life. The brutal wolf, in turn, began to finish off Kun. But at that time, a fiery arrow flashed between them. It was the main character who hurried to defeat the intruder and save Ren. Hao delivered his most powerful blows to the leader of the werewolves over and over again, and in the end, with the help of a fiery fist, he literally crushed the demon into the ground. He was shocked by the guy's sudden appearance and couldn't believe that he had such power. She looked at her savior for a long time without uttering a single word. The hands of the brave and self-satisfied boy continued to glow with magical fire. However, the invasion of werewolves did not end, and a moment later 3 more approached him. Concerned, Kun shouted to the young master that there were demonic wolves behind him. The daredevil, in turn, said that he did not have time to deal with them, after which he used a kind of fiery whirlwind, which simply scattered the animals to the sides. By that time, the king of the monsters had come to his senses and stood up. The guy immediately rushed towards him. The werewolf lord tried to resist him, but Khan's strength was clearly superior to him. Gathering all his power into a fiery fist, Hao launched a lightning attack. Subsequently, the monster burst into flames. The system reported that in case of superiority, the attribute affiliation is not taken into account. After a couple of seconds, the wolf was finally defeated and collapsed unconscious on the ground. After his death, the werewolf literally disappeared into thin air and eventually disappeared. The system hastened to award the teenager 50 experience points. The young man looked in surprise at the pop-up window. While the minions of their deceased royal demon hurried to escape from the battlefield, Khan decided to familiarize himself with the panel of his characteristics, where the strength indicator increased to 35 units. Returning home with Chi, Hao began to board up the hole in the wall with wooden planks to prevent the monsters from getting inside. Vientiane asked if he liked this adventure, but the guy stated that he does not play such games. Unexpectedly, the girl asked her savior if they could get back to business. However, the young man understood perfectly well that after this his head would be torn off. In this connection, Khan asked her to wait, since he was very hungry and wanted to go to the store. But as soon as he opened the front door, unknown people stood on the threshold. The stranger instantly pushed him inside the apartment and Hao collapsed on the floor. Then the young girl stepped on his chest and ordered him not to move. The stunned Khan could not understand what was happening. Finally, Lin revealed that she was a member of the Secret Service and called for his assistance. Because they are looking for a certain intruder in his house, the teenager could not see the face in the photo that Faye showed him. The girl, in turn, instantly ordered her people to search everything. Unit employees in special suits immediately began to search the protagonist's apartment. Hao himself could not find Ren anywhere, which was very useful, because it would be difficult for Lin to explain the presence of Qi. Suddenly, Khan said that he was in fact a law-abiding citizen and had not done anything wrong. But suddenly, the guy saw a hand sticking out from under the blanket on the bed. He realized it was Kwon. It was urgent to somehow distract the Secret Service employee. He instantly hit her on the radio hanging on her belt. When Vientiane appeared, everyone present was shocked by this turn, as was Lin. The young master realized what he had done and immediately began to ask the girl for forgiveness. However, Faye instantly ordered her men to take the teenager to the station. A few minutes later, they were already heading to the police station in a police car. Handcuffed to the seat, Hao said that he was innocent of anything. But Lin had a different opinion. Suddenly, there was an explosion outside the window. The stunned guy decided to see what happened. Khan saw a certain man with metal tentacles on his back who began to wreak havoc. Following him, unknown monsters appeared. They destroyed all the houses and shops. People ran away in panic. The young man realized that the world would never be the same. Lin, in turn, contacted the headquarters and asked for permission to capture the criminals. But she was refused. The girl began to be indignant about this but could not do anything. Finally, after a certain time, they successfully reached the department. Hao was dragged into the interrogation room and ordered to wait for the captain. The perplexed teenager asked how long he should wait for the officer, realizing that the system set him up and now he is forced to sit in the police. At that moment, a program spoke in the video camera and expressed its dissatisfaction, saying that Khan has incredible power, and instead of dealing with them, he sits here. In response, the guy began to insult Vientiane. Lin observed what was happening in the interrogation room and came to the conclusion that he was not right in the head. Meanwhile, Hao continued to complain to the CCTV camera. Faye noticed that she clearly underestimated him because the guy had literally gone crazy, after which she decided to personally deal with him, which foreshadowed a far from calm conversation. An extremely confident young girl walked down the corridor to the interrogation room, but as soon as she grabbed the door handle, a male voice that was painfully familiar to her called out to her. It was a second-rank captain named Tang Xiao, who once again invited her to dinner. However, Lin was not interested in him, and she rejected his tempting offer. But the guy was extremely assertive and grabbed her hand, then said that she should think carefully, adding that he is wooing her for the 100th time. But she always puts him in an awkward position with her refusals. Faye, in turn, made it clear that she did not need such a flawed person like him. As a result, Tan got furious and wanted to express his indignation to her. But the girl closed the door on the other side. The employees, as always, laughed at his attempts and said that he wouldn't succeed. At the same time, his feelings for her worsened right before her father's appointment as head of the department. Enraged, Xiao turned to the girls and called them gossips, after which he left in an unknown direction. Meanwhile, Lin asked Hao why the monsters invaded his house. Han replied that he did not understand what she was talking about. Captain Faye instantly flared up and slammed her hand on the table, ordering the young man not to pretend. After all, it was his apartment that was the first to suffer, and something terrible broke free. The teenager, in turn, began to mumble something indistinctly, but could not explain anything. At that moment, strange sounds were heard from the landing, and blood gushed onto the walls. The brutal Tang killed 2 management employees in cold blood and was pleased with himself. On his wrist was exactly the same bracelet of abilities as Hao. Xiao intended to do the same with Lin, who rejected him because she had once again humiliated the guy. Tan then went to the evidence room and told the employee that the boss had ordered him to check the documents. The extremely surprised policeman gave him the necessary papers and asked if Xiao would really be working at night. The young man ignored his question and asked if unidentified objects were sent to the archive. The employee replied that they were on the 19th and 20th with the 21st shelf. Tang immediately killed the policeman by piercing his body with his hand, then went to the archives. Xiao understood perfectly well that these valuables must be taken with him. The distraught guy simply turned into a monster and wanted to conquer the world. After a certain time, one of the law enforcement officers came across the corpses of women. The girl got scared and screamed. 2 more teenagers instantly came to her aid, who also discovered the bodies of their colleagues and were shocked by such an event. Naturally, they told the head of the Secret Service, Wan Shan, that Tang was killing his colleagues. Lin was furious and demanded proof from his subordinates, because this was a rather serious accusation. Department employees said that they checked the recordings from video cameras and there could be no mistake. At that moment, an assistant ran into the office of the head of the department and reported that Xiao had been found, adding that he has been in the evidence room for 20 minutes. But no one could understand what he needed there and why he went there at all. The unexpectedly embittered head of the special department said that it didn't matter. The most important thing is that Tang killed his colleagues, and for this he is sentenced to death. Wang personally wanted to carry out the punishment. A couple of minutes later, special forces surrounded the entrance to the archive and prepared for the assault. The assistant informed Shan that there were also patrols downstairs to prevent Xiao from escaping through the window. But as soon as Lin gave the order, the door to the evidence room was broken down. Suddenly, there was an explosion and the door flew to the side, thus killing most of the police. A self-confident Tang stood on the threshold and asked why they came here. The remaining commandos immediately opened fire with their rifles. However, suddenly, Xiao's body began to become overgrown with unknown metal armor. As it turned out, the bullets were absolutely harmless to him and did not cause any damage. Everyone realized that Tang had removed unidentified items from the archive. Wan immediately ordered the use of weapons against metal. A moment later, corresponding grenades flew towards the fearless Xiao. But even liquid nitrogen could not corrode the miraculous armor. The guy only smiled with their efforts. Then he rushed into battle and said that today they would see real strength. Shan immediately ordered everyone to evacuate the building. The head of the Secret Service himself boldly rushed to confront Tan. Xiao declared that the old man could not defeat him and that he would soon be convinced of this himself. But Wanshan was full of confidence that he could moderate the ardor of the self-confident Xiao. As a result, they clashed in mortal combat, and the entire room was engulfed in fire. The assistant chief, in turn, hurried to his supervisor. However, the flames enveloped his body, and the guy stepped back. The special forces also began to move aside. Fei at this time continued to interrogate the main character using a particularly harsh method, calling on Hao to tell him what really happened in his apartment, but the guy was silent. Suddenly, alarms sounded throughout the building. Lin couldn't understand what happened. The girl instantly ran out into the corridor and saw all the employees running in panic towards the exit. Suddenly, one of them said that Tan had mutated and turned into some kind of monster. A couple of seconds later, Xiao broke through the ceiling and found himself right in front of her. The captain was terrified. He broke into a malicious smile and said that he had finally found his beauty. Fei pulled out her gun and pointed it at the distraught Tang, but he continued to behave confidently. At that moment, the young master was sitting in the interrogation room and thinking that this girl was somehow crazy. Suddenly, the wall to the room collapsed. Khan did not have time to understand anything, but then he saw how a humanoid monster unknown to him hit Lin. Xiao immediately pressed Lin to the wall and tried in every possible way to gain her favor. However, the girl, being in a hopeless situation, once again did not reciprocate his feelings. Unexpectedly, she asked the young master for help, but the main character did not even think of helping her. Instead, Hao wanted to leave this location as soon as possible, but as it turned out, it was not so easy. Stating that he ended up in this place completely by chance, Khan hurried to the exit. The enraged Tang, in turn, ordered him to quickly get out of control. But at that moment, Vientiane began to insult the guy, saying that he could not leave the girl in trouble. Indignant, Xiao thought that it was the teenager who had spoken to him. However, the young man said that the sound was coming from a CCTV camera and he was already leaving. Tang nervously said that he was giving him one last chance to finally leave the building. But the system continued to express its dissatisfaction with the frightened Hao. Stunned, Xiao turned and fixed his angry gaze on the guy, after which he immediately rushed towards him, saying that he would tear him into pieces. Khan instantly chose the next card from the program and began to confront Tan, who in turn realized that the young man was also a chosen warrior. Soon, the magic bracelet absorbed the teenager's next ability. Thus, Hao obtained the Blood Dragon skill and prepared for the clash. Subsequently, they clashed in mortal combat, and an explosion thundered throughout the entire control. Xiao immediately acquired his incredible metal armor and jumped to the side, after which he began to look around. But the guy unknown to him suddenly disappeared somewhere. Tan understood that the boy was really not as simple as he might have seemed at first, which on the contrary only cheered him up because fighting with someone worthy was much more interesting. At the same time, Khan managed to take Lin with him, and Xiao, in turn, used magical skills to find them. Meanwhile, the young man and Fei ran to another room and closed the door. Hao naively believed that they had finally broken away from this madman and he would not find them. Suddenly, a program appeared on the monitor screen and began to say that the guy must be brave. Lin did not understand what it was. The teenager began to talk about how he couldn't cope with that monster. However, the system continued to claim that he was the chosen one and must please it in order to receive experience points. The perplexed Fei suggested that this computer virus was in league with Khan. Then Hao told the whole truth about the game and that it had gone beyond the virtual world. Lin realized why Tang became so strong and most likely emptied the vault, after which the girl headed towards the exit. The surprised guy asked where she was going. Fei stated that she needed to find her father. Suddenly, Vientiane wondered if she was talking about the man who almost got burned. Then she showed her the CCTV photographs and told her that he had been seriously injured. The shocked Lin immediately rushed to the exit, but Han urged her to calm down, because if she went out, she would die. The system, in turn, hurried Hao and Fei, because Xiao would soon find them. The frightened young lady began to tearfully ask the young man to help her save her father. However, the program encouraged her to make the guy nervous in order to bring him into action. Lin began to use her feminine tricks, but they did not work on Han. Vientiane said that she was not trying at all and needed to impress him. The girl collected her thoughts for a long time and finally decided to take desperate actions. She instantly pushed Hao and the guy collapsed on the floor, not understanding what was happening. Then she showed him all the feminine beauty. The teenager was shocked. He didn't know where to escape from the madness that was happening and silently looked at Fei. After some time, the shy Lin asked if this was enough for the main character. The enthusiastic system said that most likely this would indeed be enough. The young master was embarrassed and did not know how to behave in such a situation. A moment later, he was awarded as much as 200 experience points. Khan was surprised. Thus, Hao became the first player to reach the 3rd level. Thus, he had the opportunity to choose a magic card again, with more valuable props. However, at this moment, the enraged Tang had already begun to break down the door to the room. The guy, in turn, understood that they had absolutely no time to think. In this connection, he chose all 3 magic cards at the same time, which was the right decision. His eyes sparkled and he received the Azure Dragon Gloves, increasing his attack. Khan also purchased an elixir and a heart-chilling pill that could change an attribute for half an hour. Suddenly, a 3-headed dog broke through the door and hurried to attack them. Frightened, Lin backed away and literally ran into the wall, not knowing what to do. Hao, with his robotic arms, called for her to step aside. He himself began to brutally beat the demonic dog, inflicting crushing blows on it. At this time, Xiao heard a loud explosion, and the ground beneath his feet shook. Stunned, Tang looked up and saw an energy surge, which came from the control building. He never expected such a result. Realizing that the boy was able to defeat the 3-headed dog with just one blow, due to this, Xiao hurried inside to deal with the teenager. Khan, meanwhile, successfully eliminated the demonic dog using his metal hands. He himself did not expect such strength from himself. Fei was also impressed by his unimaginable power. The system noticed that if he collected all 5 pieces of armor, he would be able to cope with stronger monsters, adding that she even adjusted the drop rate of Azure equipment. Hao was grateful to the program for the first time and hurried to get Lin out of the building. Realizing that he had found the key to Vientiane and would now be able to improve with ease. But at this time, Tang unexpectedly attacked the guy with the help of his abilities. Khan parried his blow and asked why the program did not warn him of the approaching danger. The extremely indignant system said that he himself distracted it with conversations. Xiao, in turn, invited the young man to become his ally in order to conquer this world together. However, the teenager said he was not interested in this and just wanted to go home to sleep. Naturally distraught, Tang rushed towards Hao, demonstrating his skills. A moment later, he released ice crystals towards the self-confident boy. Han immediately ordered Lin to run away and save people while he dealt with Xiao. The girl called on the guy to be careful and ran away. The young master immediately entered into a fight with Tang, and after some time, Hao discovered that he was indeed quite strong. Xiao, in turn, stated that in combat experience he was far from him and would never compare. Khan began to think about how he could defeat this crazy man, because his armor ignored most blows. But at a certain moment, Tang carried out another attack, and his hand got stuck in Hao's block. And no matter how Xiao tried to pull her out, nothing worked, thereby giving the guy the opportunity to carry out his attack. Naturally, Khan took advantage of it and began to twist his arm, which was extremely painful. After which he began to deliver powerful blows with his metal gloves. Tan began to understand the situation he was in. But there was nothing he could do. Hao carried out another attack and finally threw him out into the street, breaking through the wall. Even the main character himself did not expect such a result, once again admiring the new weapons. Wentian noticed that by blocking Xiao's blow, he was able to strengthen his blow tenfold. The young man again began to thank the smartest system and declare that now no one is afraid of him. Suddenly, the burned Wanshan called out to the teenager and grabbed him by the shoulder. Khan turned around and saw in front of him the head of the secret organization. Meanwhile, a worried Fei went in search of her father, but could not find him anywhere. Lin ran among the wounded employees, hoping that he was okay and alive. But the nurse said that as soon as he regained consciousness, he immediately went to find Tan, At this time, the young master was dodging numerous blows from the weakened Shan. Trying not to harm him, Wan continued to attack Hao uncontrollably. For some time, the main character avoided his blows, but Lin did not stop acting aggressively. The young warrior could not understand whether he had really confused him with that person or simply saw him as a threat. Khan, in turn, tried to calm him down, but all attempts were in vain. Wanshan still believed that he was fighting Xiao and did not want to listen to anything. As a result, he couldn't think of anything better than to simply run away from the battlefield, saying that the old man had made a mistake. At this moment, Fei finally found her distraught father and urged him not to touch Hao. Suddenly, Van stopped and looked at his daughter for a long time. Ultimately, the head of the Secret Service came to his senses and calmed down. Ambulances did not stop helping people, and most of them were hospitalized. According to preliminary estimates, 6 people were killed, 13 were seriously injured, and 45 received minor injuries. At the same time, 135 objects disappeared from the storage facility, and Tang took advantage of the moment and escaped. Sean said he urgently needs to be brought to justice. Then he asked Hao to call the Last Days game system to find out what happened. Khan replied that he had been trying to do this for half a day, but the program did not respond. Fei stated that she had seen it with her own eyes, and the guy was not lying. Wan understood that Tang had acquired part of the artifact, and this was a problem, and it was also unknown how dangerous it was. In connection with this, he suggested reporting everything to his superiors and organizing a rapid response squad. The head also appointed his daughter to be responsible for the squad, and Khan as her assistant. The teenager was shocked. Hao asked not to involve him in this story, saying that he actually needed to go to work tomorrow. But while he was saying all this, the chair of the head of the Secret Service was empty. Van, who was a meter away from him, said that he had turned the building into ruins with one blow and was now obliged to compensate. After which Fei took the extremely dissatisfied guy home. Khan noticed that her father knew how to find an approach to people, but he doesn't like that he just wanted to help. But now he finds himself in debt. Unexpectedly, Lin said that he could not leave her in the current situation. The young man could not believe it, because just a few hours ago, she had beaten him in the interrogation room and behaved like crazy. And now Fei is asking him for help. It was quite suspicious. She then urged him to take the necessary things and follow her, because Xiao would clearly take revenge on her. But when Hao entered the apartment, he saw the charming Ren in front of him, who said that she had already waited for him and was ready to relieve the tension, because he was clearly exhausted from the whole day. The perplexed Lin immediately ran into the room and asked what was happening here. Assuming that this was Khan's girlfriend, the guy began to make excuses and deny everything. After some time, they all arrived together at a certain mansion. According to Fei, Tang should not have found them here. The captain said that his room was on the 2nd floor, and her bedroom was a few meters away. At the same time, she decided to place Q in the garage. Chi did not understand what this discrimination was connected with, but as soon as Ren tried to object to her, Hao urged her to calm down and obey the captain. Lin, it was not very pleasant to be next to her competitor, and she hurried to go to her place. Kun immediately began to say that they also needed to go and rest, but the teenager told her to go to his garage, adding that when he regains his strength, he will do whatever she wishes. As soon as the young man closed the door behind her, Chi urged her master to take a good rest. The system, in turn, urged the young master not to lose this opportunity and promised to award as many points as possible. Khan stated that he previously did not understand why such a powerful program was always hinting at such things. But in fact, the answer is obvious, because she herself has never had and never will have anything similar. Then Wentian said that she previously believed that there was no difference between the game she created and reality. However, over time, she realized that she lacked the most important thing for happiness: great pleasure, which would make life better and more interesting for everyone. But she never managed to achieve the necessary result and open this world of pleasures to everyone. After all, in fact, she herself did not know what it was like to experience these incredible feelings. Therefore, the program sought to understand through the main character what this pleasure is. The perplexed young master said that the internet is full of such resources, but the system said that this is not the case. And besides, there is Ren with the other characters. Khan insisted on his own and called on Vientiane to block the canal, since Kun alone would be enough. However, the program did not think so, answering that the more girls there are, the better. Stunned, Hao asked if she really couldn't stop all this. The system objected, saying that she was the creator, and this was her video game, so she could easily manage all the processes. The guy reached for the toggle switch on the meter and said that he could turn off the electricity, and that would be the end of it. Vientiane sadly said that in fact she had mixed up the code of another dimension and could not stop the arrival of monsters. But if Han gives her enough data to fill in the missing code, then everything will end. The teenager lay down on the bed, realizing that he had hard work ahead of him, after which Hao fell asleep with the thought that the day had been too busy and he needed to rest. The next morning, the guy woke up with great difficulty and looked around. Then he stood up and asked the program why he didn't get enough sleep and what time he went to bed yesterday. Suddenly, the young man discovered that he had no clothes. The shocked Khan asked the system where his clothes were. To his left lay Ren Qi, who also woke up and reached out to Hao. The indignant guy jumped out of bed and asked how she got here. Kun replied that she opened the door and went into the room, but the teenager clearly remembered that he had closed it. Looking back, he saw a broken door. Suddenly, he thought that everything could have happened without his knowledge. This thought frightened him. However, the young lady said that nothing bad happened and they just fell asleep together. After all, initially he needed a good rest, and only then a miracle would happen. Soon, Kun got out of bed and put on Han's shirt. Hao silently stared at her. Qi declared that she would go to the kitchen to prepare him an unforgettable breakfast. The young man understood that he needed to urgently take action for his own safety. Looking under the blanket, the teenager discovered an unknown object on the bed. He reached out with his hand and took out an elastic band from the girl's hair, on which something about love was written. Khan immediately called the security company and asked them to send him 10 strong locks. Entering the kitchen, Hao was perplexed. On the table lay a tied tiger, which Ren had stolen from the zoo for her dish. The angry guy immediately ordered her to return the animal back. The upset girl took the tiger to the zoo. Han was shocked by Kun's antics. Having escorted her out into the street, the young man came across another uninvited guest. Surprised Hao asked who she was and what she was doing here, the stranger smiled. Then, ignoring the question, she asked if his name was Khan. The guy answered positively. The perplexed teenager once again asked who she was. The girl drew her sword and called herself the princess of the North Wind Empire named Liu Ju, adding that she actually has good intentions and she just wants to borrow something from him. The stunned Hao looked at her in bewilderment and could not understand what she was talking about. Then Liu began her story that the North Wind Empire is the strongest state. But 6 months ago, cruel monsters attacked her country, and all the elite troops were destroyed and the capital was burned to the ground. And she, like a true warrior, is looking for a way to defeat demons because it is her blood duty. She also intends to return the sword that once conquered this place and founded the North Wind Empire. Most importantly, he is the guardian of the empire, the Dragon General, of whom there is even a statue. He is the distant ancestor of the main character named Yi Dujiang. By that time, Ju, for some reason, tied Han up and sat him on a chair. Unexpectedly, the girl declared that she needed to continue her family line to restore the empire. Hao agreed, but stated that after that she would leave and not bother him anymore. However, Liu said that the demons are looking for him because he holds the secret of removing their last seal. And as soon as everything is finished, she will personally send him on his way. The guy began to be indignant. The young girl did not argue and immediately drew her blades, after which she fired several blows towards Khan, who simply closed his eyes. Moments later, the teenager found himself in an extremely awkward position and without clothes. Chu was pleased with herself and understood that she only had one last step left. The young master looked at her fearfully, realizing what was about to happen. At that moment, Liu flew up to the ceiling. Hao asked what she was going to do. Zhu immediately took off everything unnecessary and rushed to her savior. The teenager began to resist and tell her not to do this. However, the mechanism had already been launched, and the warrior was confident in her decision. Khan continued to bristle and say that she must leave his house immediately, but no persuasion worked on her. Liu stated that this was necessary for the revival of her empire. Suddenly, Lin came into the room and put a gun to her head, demanding an explanation from them. Because they behaved inappropriately, Chu, in turn, asked if it was really his wife. The teenager began to deny. The indignant Fei said that at such a time he was doing something unknown. At that moment, Hao had an epiphany, because if Liu appeared, it means that the world was once again mired in chaos. Since the second invasion of monsters has begun and must be prevented. In this connection, Han asked Lin if they could control the current situation. Fei reported that his father ordered him to go to rescue the squad, and the Bureau was also working on returning lost items. Hao said that they were leaving right away. but Zhu tried to object to him. But she never achieved the desired result, because the salvation of humanity was above all. Stubborn Liu continued to persuade the teenager, but the young man stood his ground, saying that they will definitely finish what they started and he will help her revive the empire. Finally, the warrior realized that now there was no way to persuade the guy. In this connection, she said that she would eagerly await his return. Khan said that he would give her a chance if she helped him in one important matter. Since she didn't have much choice, Zhu agreed and asked who should be killed. Meanwhile, Detachment D was completely liquidated. The bodies were scattered throughout the street. The department tried in vain to contact its subordinates, but no one answered. Suddenly, Tang picked up the radio and answered. While he pretended to be a member of the team, having reported that the detachment is near the Fenyang parking lot and the terrorists are resisting, the headquarters said that they would send Captain Lin to support them, which Xiao and his accomplices were immensely happy about. The main character at this very time was rushing to the aid of Squad D, led by Fei. The young master urged her to drive slower, but the self-confident Lin had a different opinion. A column of Secret Service agents rode behind them and waited for the captain's orders. The girl ordered everyone to focus on saving people. The rest were to follow her. However, it was at this moment that fire was opened on them. Khan began to steer instead of Lin. The shooting was carried out from some kind of laser installations, but it was not clear where the attack began. The stunned Special Service officers could not determine the location of the fire. They tried to dodge the shots, but it was almost impossible. As a result, one of the military armored vehicles exploded. The shocked Captain Fei could not understand how this could happen. Hao suddenly determined where they were being fired from. It was the second floor of the building right in front of them. Using wolf rifles, the bandits successfully eliminated most of the cars. With only 3 cars left, Han urged Zhu to take action immediately. The warrior immediately took action and began killing the snipers, who, in turn, could not understand from which side they were attacked. As a result, one after another, the terrorists died without understanding what it was. At a certain moment, Liu jumped onto the roof of a 2-story building with them. Subsequently, several more snipers lost their lives. The girl acted extremely confidently. Suddenly, Khan noticed that he began to receive experience points. The system immediately reported that Zhu had obeyed his orders and therefore he received points for killing Liu. Hao realized that he could simply form a group of girls and gain experience. This was good enough news for him. Suddenly they heard an incomprehensible sound. A couple of seconds later, a monster emerged from the ground and overturned the military vehicle. The 4th level, Heavenly Mechanical Serpent, wreaked havoc in the city. The monster was right behind them. Lin hurried to break away from the metal demon. However, the mechanized creature moved at incredible speed. Khan, in turn, instantly used the ability of the earthen cell. Stone tentacles literally grew out of the ground and rushed towards the serpent. As a result, they were able to fetter the monster in movement, and thereby giving Lin the opportunity to break away from him. But this only worked for a few seconds, as the Heavenly Mechanical Serpent bit through all the earthen tentacles and freed itself. Then Hao put on his magic gloves and called on Fei to try to break through while he dealt with the monster. But the captain declared that she would fight him, at which time Liu arrived to their aid. She suddenly landed on Lin's car. The guy couldn't understand what Xu was up to. The warrior said that he would not be able to defeat the mechanized serpent. Because he is too strong and resilient, Khan did not know what to do. Liu, in turn, said that she would personally deal with the monster, and they needed to break through further. After which the brave girl rushed into a fierce fight with the robotic creature. At that moment, Hao decided to try his luck and pull out another magic card. At the same time, he asked Vientiane to give him a skill that could defeat the snake. However, he was dealt a rather weak card, and the guy began to insult the program. The system responded that he could not constantly obtain only high-ranking skills. After all, they drop out randomly. Suddenly, a fiery arrow flew into Fei's car. As a result of the hit, the driver's door instantly broke off its hinges and flew to the side. Frightened, Lin jumped up on the young master and declared that these arrows were explosive. At the same time, the road was literally littered with speed bumps, which also caused discomfort. Thus, for several tens of meters, they drove as if over bumps. Fei, in turn, began to complain about the bad road. The young man agreed with her in this regard. In this situation, our heroes continued on the road for some time, which brought incredible pleasure to Vientiane, who expressed her admiration. However, unexpectedly, the young master saw Tang ahead, standing in the middle of the road. Captain Lin immediately turned around and indeed found Xiao furious. The guy blocked their path, holding a huge magic blade in his hands. It was the Executioner's sword, which was at level C. Tang prepared to attack. Khan understood that he needed to act quickly and began to choose another card. A moment later, Xiao cut the car into two parts. It seemed impossible to survive. The car immediately split in half. Tan was more than pleased with himself. Subsequently, an explosion occurred. He naively believed that they were already dead. However, turning around, Xiao noticed a visible silhouette in the fire. Hao literally carried Fei out in his arms. There was not a scratch on them, which shocked Tang. In fact, before the collision, the guy managed to receive the Azure Dragon armor from the program, and this is what saved them from death. Lin was delighted with the young master. An embittered Xiao immediately set about correcting this and began attacking them with his skills. Khan, in turn, called on the captain to hide somewhere, and he himself rushed to Tan. At the same time, Hao actively used the ability of the Dragon Scale Shield, who ignored all the attempts of Xiao's magical blade. Thereby, the young man got closer to him. Stunned by the boy's incredible strength, Tang ordered his men to kill him. The snipers on the roof of the building prepared to attack with wolf rifles. Fei was shocked by the fact that in just 24 hours he had assembled an entire army. As a result, Xiao's henchmen began shooting at the teenager's protective barrier. Numerous explosions occurred, but they failed to destroy the shield. At the same time, Hao understood that there were too many of them, and he would have a hard time. An enraged Tang continued to urge the snipers to attack more intensely. Khan heroically headed towards the group leader through heavy fire. He was only a few steps away from Xiao, but he turned out to be not so stupid. Realizing that the guy wanted to bring him under fire, Tan began to step back. However, at that moment, his legs were tied by Hao's earthen magic, and he tried to free himself. But nothing worked, because this force could even restrain a mechanical snake, not to mention a person. The frightened Xiao immediately ordered his charges to cease fire. But he was hard to hear, and the snipers thought that, on the contrary, he was urging them not to stop. But they could not understand why he did not run away, because the bullets could have wounded him. Thus, they continued the cannonade with all weapons, and a barrage of fiery arrows flew towards Thane. Xiao finally realized that he would not survive, and he even shed a manly tear. A couple of seconds later, an explosion occurred, which still could not bring down Khan's shield. Suddenly, Ren arrived to help Hao on a fiery phoenix, which began to incinerate the bandits. Kun plunged their bodies into absolute hell in a split second, burning them to ashes. He shouted to her master that she had come to save him, and he had nothing to worry about anymore. The young man was grateful to her, realizing that she had come at the right time. At this moment, the wounded Tang tried to find his defense emblems but was unable to do so, since by that time the young master had overtaken him and began to deliver crushing blows. Meanwhile, an unknown person watched what was happening through a telescope, after which he informed his boss that Hao had killed Xiao. The girl was pleased with this news. She was the master of the Ice Silver Moon Guild named Bao Panji, and ordered Han to be recruited into their clan. The main character approached the bloody body of the defeated Tan and said that this time he was definitely finished. But the young master could not understand why he was given only 50 experience points. Suddenly, Lin called out to him. The guy instantly ran up to the captain, naively believing that Xiao would no longer be able to cause them trouble. However, in fact, he woke up in an unknown place, absolutely healthy and unharmed, which, naturally, he was immensely glad and happy about, because his journey was not over yet. This means that it is necessary to gather new forces to confront Hao and Fei. What he instantly did, Tan wanted only one thing: to take revenge on them in any way. Meanwhile, Han and Lin found a surviving member of the Ice Silver Moon Guild, who said that the head of the group ordered them to set up an ambush here and steal artifacts. Hao asked who their leader is. The bandit began to argue that they could not meet with him, since they were members of the Outer Circle. Captain Fei hurried to take the criminal to the station to properly interrogate him. At that moment, Kun ran up to the young man and threw himself into his arms, saying that she had put on a real show today. Then she demanded that the young master thank her for her heroism. However, Khan said that first they need to help Zhu, and then they can rest. Liu, who suddenly appeared, said that this was useless, since she had defeated the robotic snake, adding that although it was not easy, she managed it without their help. The system immediately awarded Hao 100 experience points. The guy was pleasantly surprised by such a reward. Thus, his attack power was already 75 units, and his critical hit increased to 3 points. At the same time, he understood perfectly well that the 4th level was still far away, and he needed to accumulate more points. In addition, it was extremely difficult to influence Vientiane's decisions, and all that remained was to follow the rules of skill development. Soon they all went home together, where Khan could finally rest in peace. The teenager wanted to order food online, but these services were quite expensive. Suddenly, Kun came into the room and called the gentleman to have lunch. She was holding a plate of noodles in her hands. The girl was extremely polite to Hao and stated that he would like her cooking. The hungry young man immediately started eating and said that her noodles were really very tasty. Ki was sincerely happy with this result and noticed that she wanted him to prepare breakfast for her soon. A moment later, Ju came into the room and said that her food was much tastier. After all, she had cooked oysters with green onions on the grill. Han was intrigued. After which the girls began to insult each other and got bogged down in a long argument. Hao quickly got tired of their debate, and he lost all appetite and therefore asked them to stop this circus. But the young ladies did not seem to hear him and continued to talk in a raised voice. Suddenly, someone rang the doorbell. The young master assumed it was a food delivery. But when he opened the door, Khan saw a girl unknown to him on the threshold. The stranger asked the guy if his name was Hao. He answered positively. She herself introduced herself as Miss Bao's personal secretary and invited him to a banquet, adding that his suit is ready and he definitely needs to come to this event. The perplexed Khan asked what kind of Bao we were talking about and what was going on. Suddenly, he wondered if it was Panji, who inherited billions of dollars in assets and is the director of Qiansheng Company. The young lady confirmed his guesses and hurried away, saying that she would look forward to meeting him at the banquet. Then she gave him a box with a suit and left. Hao was shocked, because not so long ago he tried to get into their corporation. The young man in turn suspected something was wrong and wanted to refuse such an honor. But when he opened the box, Khan saw a huge amount of money and was taken aback. This really was a rather strange turn of events because no one gives out money just like that. In the evening, Captain Lin was informed that the young master had gone alone to the banquet. Surprised Fei could not understand why Hao even agreed to go there. Her colleagues said that a Qiansheng Company car came to him and handed him 3 unknown boxes, and that's why they didn't stop them. But the girl was unhappy with this result. Meanwhile, the protagonist finally arrived at the Qiansheng Corporation headquarters, where, accordingly, the banquet took place, which was attended by a huge number of influential personalities. A moment later, the incomparable director of the Bao Company appeared at the event. Everyone was blinded by her beauty and said that she was an incredible woman. After all, Panji defended her doctorate in philosophy at such a young age and solved a world-class problem in quantum physics. At the same time, she was a billionaire. Suddenly, Yang asked her to determine the priority of the Huangxi group regarding new products. Bao stated that everything would be fine. But at that moment, Cao appeared at the banquet. Few people were pleased to see Tidy at this event, and some even rushed to leave. Meanwhile, all the spotlights on the stage were directed at Cao, who prepared a whole show. It consisted of dancing and singing, but he had no talent for either. That did not prevent him, despite his lack of potential, from putting on a show. The pretentious and extremely arrogant boy continued to disgrace himself, although he himself did not think so. Finally, it was time for his song. With his bodyguards singing backup, the guests began to express their discontent en masse, but quietly, since his father was the governor of Guangshan province. The spectacle was truly shameful, and everyone dreamed of only one thing, that it would end as soon as possible. Tao eventually rode up to Panji on roller skates with flowers in his hands. However, Bao did not reciprocate his feelings and hastened to step aside. Persistent Tidy continued to radiate his vibes towards her. Suddenly, the girl saw Khan and called out to the guy, who at that time decided to have a little snack. Hao, in turn, turned around and with his mouth full, greeted Pan, who had invited him to the party. At that moment, Cao accelerated too much on his roller skates and literally drove into the teenager. The collision turned out to be quite painful for Tidy and he immediately called the guards, who ordered to throw this man out of the banquet and teach him a lesson. The bodyguards were about to begin carrying out the boss's orders, but Panji stated that Han was her guest of honor. Literally shocking most people, Cao also couldn't understand what was happening. Tidy gritted his teeth and urged the teenager to introduce himself, according to their rules. But just as Hao was about to say his name, Bao suddenly took him to her room. At the same time, the girl approached him quite close and gently took his hand, which naturally didn't please the angry competitor, but he remained silent. However, Cao soon broke loose and ran after them. The guards immediately stopped him, saying that he should not insult the lady. A couple of minutes later, Panji led the young master into the restroom. Han began to look around. The company's business director Qiansheng sat down on the chair and said that he shouldn't take Tidy seriously, after which Bao took off her stockings and mysteriously asked if he knew why she called him here. The shy Hao replied that she wanted to invite him to her guild. The girl looked at him suspiciously and asked where he was from and if he knew who she was. The guy stated that as soon as he defeated Xiao, she wanted to contact him, so everything is very clear. Panji, in turn, smiled and noted that she liked to do business with smart people. Then she asked how much he wanted for joining the clan. Hao replied that he did not need money, adding that if she really wants to invite him to her guild, then she will have to offer something more interesting than some pieces of paper. Bao was surprised that the young master dared to negotiate with her. Apparently, the victory over Tang had changed him. The main character said that in fact Xiao is not even close to him. Suddenly, Panji asked the guy what he knew about the game last days, but Han didn't know much about it. Bao stated that she had been following the video game for a long time and even wanted to hack it, but was never able to, adding that this game is really unusual. At this moment, Vientiane appeared on the big screen behind the girl. The teenager mentally began to ask the system to go away and not show his face ahead of time. Pan suddenly asked where he was looking. The young man urged her to continue her thoughts. Then, the ruler of the Ice Silver Moon Guild said that after the first invasion, she began to collect information. And after a certain time, she managed to find out something extremely important. Absolutely all artifacts came from the video game The Last Days, after which Bao showed on the screen all the found objects and various weapons from the game. Headmistress Qiansheng noticed that Hao was not at all surprised and asked him if he was familiar with these artifacts. The teenager began to deny everything, realizing that the gap between the game and reality must remain a secret. Panji also stated that she was able to find out when and where exactly the next invasion would occur. Surprised, Khan asked if it wasn't happening all over the world at the same time. Bao partly agreed, but the artifacts appear in certain places that she showed on the map. Then the girl called the guy to join her clan and promised to help him reach the top. At that moment, Captain Lin from the roof lowered herself on a rope to the window of this room and watched what was happening. Fei immediately contacted her charges and ordered them to await further instructions. She understood perfectly well that if Hao agreed, then everything would be lost. Unexpectedly, the young master refused Panji's request and said that he had made a promise to one person and could not break it. Captain Lin was delighted with his answer and even began to have some feelings for Han, after which the guy recommended that Bao dissolve the guild, since sooner or later the police will come for them. Assistant Pan asked the ruler if this guy needed to be eliminated, but Ji refused this idea, adding that she has a completely different plan and very soon this young man will become her property. Meanwhile, under the Qiansheng headquarters, an enraged Kao was waiting for Hao. Tidy sat in the car and began to boil with anger more and more with every second. Finally, the teenager left the building, as Kao's personal driver reported. The main character at that moment took out his phone. Tidy assumed that he was calling his subordinates so that they would pick him up. However, a little later, it became clear that the guy simply rented a bike. Chow and his bodyguard were shocked by the fact that he was actually a beggar. In this regard, Tidy immediately ordered the driver to grab this man. The security guard instantly pressed the pedal to the floor, but the car stood still. What made them think? The stunned guy turned back and saw Tan, who lifted the car with just one hand and thereby did not give it the opportunity to move. Xiao very convincingly asked Cao to get out of the car to discuss something. At this time, it was late evening, and Hao finally returned to his home. Wandering around the rooms, he thought that even bicycle rentals had become more expensive. But he had no money. Suddenly, a smiling Lin greeted him and offered him a glass of water. Realizing that he was exhausted from the whole day, extremely surprised, Khan took a cup of water and thanked her for her concern. Suddenly, Fei lifted up her t-shirt and announced that the air conditioning was not cooling well today. The perplexed young man looked around and asked where Chu and Ren had gone. The girl immediately punched the wall, leaving a mark on it, and said that she sent them to renew their ideal, adding that he should behave well so that she does not take appropriate action. Lin then said that she had wanted to discuss something with him alone for a very long time. At this time, a certain rocket was heading towards their house at great speed. However, anti-aircraft installations responded to the threat in a timely manner. As a result, the cannons shot down the shell, and the glow literally covered the night sky. The glass from the window frames flew out of the house as a shockwave, and the main character instantly covered Fei with himself. The young master asked the captain what happened. Lin replied that the melee weapon system had gone off. The Secret Service employee then asked her guards for information. One of them reported that the artillery attack was detected by radar and stopped by the interception system, adding that the safe house was practically undamaged and several windows needed to be repaired. And the search for an artillery launch position is currently underway. At this moment, Cao was indignant, stating that they could not kill this Khan but only created a mess, and now they are looking for them. However, Tang urged him not to panic and to calm down as it was just goal setting. And then the real performance will begin. Then Xiao used some magic. The ground was shrouded in purple fog, and Tidy, stunned, asked what it was. A moment later, a level 2 armed cicada appeared on the ground, which immediately opened fire towards the building where Hao and Fei were located. Lin, meanwhile, ordered her charges to call the anti-terrorism team. After all, if they have artillery, then they probably have other weapons. Suddenly, the sky lit up with many shells. After a couple of seconds, they reached their goal and smashed Captain Fei's house to pieces. Cao was extremely happy about this and said that this was really a real show. But Tan urged him to go to the next location. The shocked Tidy asked if they had killed the boy. Xiao said that this guy is a tough nut to crack and won't be able to deal with him that easily. By that time, the house had literally turned into ruins and everything was on fire. Hao managed to put on the armor of the Azure Dragon and cover Lin with himself, thereby saving her. The angry girl said that this was too much and they needed to fight back. After a certain time, Fei showed up with police officers to Panji, who sat absolutely calmly in her office and received influential guests. The perplexed Bao asked the Secret Service captain what was going on. Lin presented her with an arrest warrant and told her that she was suspected of carrying out a terrorist attack. The extremely indignant Mr. Yang and the other businessmen rushed to object to her. Pan herself stated that Fei would not be able to take her with just a few officers, because there are clearly not enough of them. After which Ji broke into a malicious smile. At that moment, the young master ran into the room and called on them all to calm down, adding that if they start to conflict with each other, they will definitely fall into the trap of the real criminal. Ji, in the same calm manner, asked the guy if he believed that she was not guilty. Khan replied that he really believed her, because if she wanted to kill him, she would have already done it at the banquet. As a result, Bao showed respect for Hao and agreed to follow Captain Fei. Lin, in turn, angrily asked if the arrest warrant was not as effective as this young man. Naturally, this became a real sensation for journalists, and they could not miss the opportunity to film a report about it. Where the correspondent reported that the famous businesswoman Panji was arrested, but the police were hiding the details. Once in control, Bao began to deny her involvement in the Ice Silver Moon Guild. Fei asked why she invited Han. Ji calmly replied that she just wanted to talk to him. Wanshan, in turn, watched the interrogation and asked Hao if she really was not the one they were looking for. The guy answered positively, because she still wants him to join her clan. Shan asked who was pursuing him then. The young man thought and could not understand who could really cause him trouble. Meanwhile, Assistant Panji returned to her office and closed the door behind her. Suddenly, she saw Tang in front of her and froze in place. Xiao immediately grabbed her. Then he asked where the system that predicts the future was located. The main character at this time continued to discuss who he had fallen into a trap with. The head of the Secret Service asked what they should do next. The young master decided to go to Bao's company to observe its subordinates. At that moment, an assistant came running to Vanya and said that the prison was under attack by mutants, and their target was the most guarded prisoners. Khan said that these could be the same people who attacked him, and therefore he would go to the scene. Suddenly, Shan stopped the teenager in a commanding tone, and Hao turned around. The head of the organization encouraged him to take his team with him to ensure success. The young man was surprised by this news and asked about his own squad. This team turned out to be people from the Thunder Rapid Response Squad. Wan noticed that they are the best masters, and each of them is capable of defeating dozens of enemies. Adding that from now on Khan is their captain and will lead him, they also have special skills. The guy was pleased with the boss's decision and called on the squad to move out immediately. By that time, the prison had literally turned into ruins and was burning with fire. The prisoners took the opportunity to escape and ran in different directions. However, several of them decided to mock the guards, which became their fatal mistake. A moment later, the newly made captain appeared with his team. As a result, they began the mass extermination of especially dangerous prisoners. Hao ordered his subordinates to immediately arrest the surviving criminals. Thus, they managed to arrest several people, and Han asked what about mutants. The Thunder Squad reported that they most likely fled before their arrival, since no traces were found. Meanwhile, Tang continued to keep Panji's young assistant in the office. where he tied her up and constantly called someone. Cao was also with him, who was nervous all the time, persuading Xiao to quickly get out of here so that they would not be caught. Tan was informed that Hao was already nearby. In this connection, he called on Tidy to calm down and said that soon everything would be over and they would kill this kid. At that moment, the young master and Ren flew on her phoenix to Bao's main office, after which they hurried up to Pan's office. Han thanked Kun for her help, but as soon as they entered the building, bloody guards lay everywhere. A moment later, an embittered Tang came out to them. Hao did not expect such a meeting. Xiao, as always, behaved extremely arrogantly. The teenager, in turn, could not believe what was happening, stating that he personally killed him, and this could not happen. Tan only smiled in response. Then he said that in fact he is immortal, and has already risen from the dead several times. Then the brave young man decided to arrest him and put him behind bars. Xiao said that first he would have to find a way to get out of this circle. At the same moment, a certain installation was activated, and they seemed to be behind some kind of protective barrier. Khan hurried to destroy the magical shield with the help of his abilities. But no matter how many times the guy struck, he was never able to break through the barrier. Tan continued to smile brazenly and say that he would not succeed. At a certain moment, Hao ran away again and attacked the shield, subsequently ending up in an unknown place. Then Khan asked the system what happened. The program replied, "This is illusory magic and he will be inside it until the installation collapses." And just when the young master thought there was no way out, Vientiane said he still had hope. Then she stated that for this he needed to remove the first seal from Ren. She also did not understand what she was talking about. Surprised, Hao took out his phone and asked how to do this and what was needed for this. The system instantly gave him instructions and told him that this was the only way to get out of this illusion. However, the young man did not really like this method of liberation, and he began to think. The program strongly recommended that the main character not waste time and get to the point. But the young master threw away the phone and tried to find another way out of the current situation. However, Vientiane assured that if he did this, there would be no consequences. Khan picked up the phone and asked if everything was really as she claimed. The smiling system assured him that it would not deceive him and he could act. Moreover, in this way, Hao would increase Kun's level, which was quite important. The stunned teenager looked at the girl and realized that there really was no other way out, after which he approached Ren and explained the situation. Without thinking twice, Chi agreed. The guy once again examined the young lady and tried to collect his thoughts. Finally, Han dared to get down to business. Kun was only happy with this outcome. The end result was that they removed everything unnecessary, feeling excited about it. After some time, a miracle finally happened and they merged into a single whole. By then it was late at night, but the process had to be completed. It was an incredible experience for both of them and they were extremely happy. The weather was beautiful all around. The mysterious starry sky beckoned. The young master understood that enough time had passed and it was time to finish. Water suddenly gushed from a nearby dam. It was an unimaginable sight. The waves literally began to flood everything around. Khan did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, all the trees were enveloped in some kind of magic, and they glowed blue. The main character watched what was happening and could not take his eyes off such beauty. After which Hao asked the system whether the seal had been removed. The program responded positively. Ren, in turn, appeared in an astral form and the girl became covered in blue. Kun then activated an unknown magic circle, waves enveloping her body, and subsequently, Chi created a kind of bright portal. A strong wind rose, the earth shook, and everything around again plunged into the mysterious blue abyss. Han hoped that they had actually succeeded in destroying Tang's installation, who, meanwhile, rejoiced and naively believed that the boy was finished. Xiao slowly raised the protective barrier installation and broke into a smile. He was extremely curious to see Hao's face, deprived of his last hope of salvation, but suddenly the device seemed to short-circuit and began to emit electrical discharges. As a result, the installation exploded, and the bloodied Tang was thrown to the side. Just a couple of seconds later, he saw an unharmed Han with Chi in front of him and was shocked, not understanding how this is even possible and how they got out of the illusion. The self-confident guy said that not only Xiao turned out to be immortal, adding that he clearly did not expect this and all his plans collapsed like a house of cards. Tang instantly rose to his feet and used his magical abilities. Having generated 2 blades, an enraged Xiao rushed to attack the young master. By that time, the teenager had managed to put on the legendary armor and successfully dodged his blows. However, he suddenly discovered that he had still managed to damage the Azure Dragon's armor. The system reported that his swords could penetrate any armor, and therefore he needed to attack. Hao decided to use Kun's spiritual bonds to destroy Tang. A moment later, a certain magical thread cut off Xiao's blades, and he was left unarmed. The teenager hurried to generate a level C sword and continued the battle. Tan began to realize that he could not defeat him so easily, and he tried to escape. But Khan did not give him such an opportunity and knocked him down. Xiao collapsed on the floor. Then the young man ran up to him and hurried to finish the distraught master. Hao immediately plunged his blade into his body. Tang screamed in wild pain, after which he declared that he would not kill him, and demanded to know how he was resurrected the last time. Even in this situation, Xiao remained arrogant and replied that he might find out about this in his next life. This answer naturally did not satisfy Han, and he put an end to Tang's suffering. As a result, an explosion occurred on the lower floors of the building. It seemed that he would not survive after this. Captain Lin saw the explosion and became worried about her beloved Hao. Among the ruins, she found the young master and hurried to help the teenager. The protagonist urged Fei to immediately take the wounded Ren to the hospital. The perplexed Lin asked how he managed to survive the explosion. The young man replied that Qi saved him. After all, in fact, at the moment of what happened, the guy tried to hold back the blow with his magic. However, he failed to do this because the explosion was too strong. Subsequently, his Azure Dragon armor was destroyed and Khan was sent flying away. Then the guy suddenly discovered the wounded Kun, who crawled towards him. The girl was in serious condition and said that she protected him as best she could. The young master tried to help her, but by that time the girl had lost consciousness. Lin noted that the scale of the explosion was simply incredible, and those who did it were simply crazy. Then Hao said that in fact Tang did not die and used the initiation of death, adding that most likely he has already taken possession of the Panji program and needs to be stopped. In this connection, he and Fei immediately rushed to run up the stairs to find out everything. But when they ran into the office of the leader of the Ice Silver Moon Guild, Xiao was not there. Instead, they found Bao's assistant tied up and rushed to help her. The girl said that it was all set up by Tidy, who stole the Pan program. Stunned, Fei asked where the rest of the clan was and how the enemy managed to invade here so easily. The young girl stated that Tao bribed several people and they went over to his side. Meanwhile, the wounded Tang returned to his apartment where he was hiding from everyone. Xiao collapsed to the floor and realized that Hao was indeed much stronger than he had imagined, but he had no more room for error. So he decided to act for sure. At this moment, his mobile phone rang and Tang crawled towards him with pain in his body. It was Tidy, who in turn angrily asked where he was. After some time they met and Xiao began to express his dissatisfaction. Xiao once again urged him to calm down and asked if he had brought the flash drive. Tai said that Tan was not himself and he would not allow him to cause worldwide chaos. A moment later, a crowd of brutal people surrounded him. Dee declared that they would solve the problem with him. The armed thugs, in turn, eagerly awaited further instructions. However, the arrogant Xiao said that these weaklings would not be able to cope with him. Xiao immediately ordered them to kill Tang and promised 3 billion as a reward. A maddened crowd of armed mutants instantly rushed towards the master. Xiao immediately generated magical claws and said that he could easily deal with them. As a result, a massive brawl broke out. Everything was covered in blood. At this time, the main character informed Panji that her program had been stolen. The girl was terrified. Hao said that it was necessary to stop the program remotely, but Bao assured that this could not be done. Lin proposed creating a new set of programs to find out the location and time of the next invasion. Jai replied that if they had the original data, it could be remade, but its storage was destroyed. Then, the young master showed her the system and urged her to ask her. The perplexed Pan asked what it was. Khan stated that he is an artificial intelligence and the creator of the game, The Last Days. Stunned, Bao asked if a certain system was a video game developer. Hao responded positively and asked Vientiane to provide the information they needed. The program said that it would do everything if they made a triple flight. The guy was horrified by such demands.